Everybody, Invisible Katana here, and today I wanted to discuss Control. It has been a crazy gaming week. Just to kick things off real quick, if you're like me, you have just been inundated with some of the best news ever. Dead Space is coming back. Ghost of Tsushima, which you can probably tell from that giant metal poster I like, that has the Director's Cut expansion. And Control, one of the best things ever made. By by my favorite developer. Remedy is officially my favorite developer. They have been ever since this amazing game. Play Alan Wake. I know a lot of you play Control, but Alan Wake. It's messing up my focus because of this amazing shiny foil on the front. Play this game. This guy right here, he's taller in person. That game's amazing. It's one of my favorite games ever created. It's 10 years old as of last year, so it's 11 years old now. That was a weird way to put that, but it had its 10-year anniversary last year. You guys can check that out, actually. I played that on my gaming channel, Invisible High, if you guys want to see that. It was an interesting experience. I hadn't played it in nearly 10 years. So that was really fun. That was really fun to go back to, but I love Alan Wake. I love Quantum Break. I don't have that, because I got that on Steam, so I don't have a physical version of that. But I think at some point I want to get that as well. But Control, absolutely love Control. This is the art book for Control, by the way. It's the art and making of book. If you like Control, you should get this. I did a review on this. You guys can check that out. I have that as like an end title card. But this thing is literally every book that is made based on video games should literally be made exactly like this. There's so much detail in it about like actors and why they chose certain, like there's so much stuff in it. Get this if you like Control. It might be hard to get at this point, but if you can find it, buy this book. It's absolutely phenomenal. Obviously I love Control. I bought the art book. I bought the freaking album. I love the game. It ties into the world of Alan Wake. It's so good. And they've recently announced that they are going to be doing a multiplayer spinoff. As of now, it's called Operation Condor. I'm curious what they're going to officially title it. There are a couple of things I could think of because, of course, it's within the oldest house, so they could kind of play around with some stuff like that. But it would be interesting to see if they kind of decide to stick with something that is kind of, because honestly, the name Control really doesn't show up much. They literally put it into the game as a part of the music, but outside of that, like, just Control is just like a cool, it's just like Control, and that's it. Like, it really ties nothing into the game outside of like kind of like the idea concepts of Control. Like, in a sense it does, but in reality it's not like people throw around the word Control or it's the title of a thing within the actual game. It's just the title of the game, and it kind of works more on like a idea concept type of level. So it'll be interesting to see how they do it, but I want to make this video because I'm excited for it. I want to see what they do with this. I know, of course, they're going to be doing, I don't want to spoil anything in case you guys haven't caught up on the DLC, but there's some stuff that happens. So we know a couple of things that are coming, down the pipeline. I'm excited for, Alan Wake 2. Crazy. So I'm excited for that. I think there's supposed to be two things actually coming out at some point, at least related to kind of the Control, specifically Control, not just like the overall world within Control. So Operation Condor, I believe, is one, and then I think they're making another single player thing, which might actually just be Control 2. I'm not 100% certain. Obviously, I'm not there, so I don't know anything. But first off, we have Operation Condor, and I think it'll be good. I'm excited to see how they do this for sure, because Remedy doesn't really tackle multiplayer like that. So I'm excited to see how that ends up playing out. If they're going to have a bit of a story element to it. I think they will, just because it's kind of what they do. Their stuff is story-based. They also have, what the F is the game? Are they the ones doing Crossfire? I think that's them. And of course, Crossfire! All I think is the old commercials. Could have done that better, but I'm dying. So I'm excited for this multiplayer, but I'm more excited because I'm curious where it takes place. I would assume it takes place before the actual game, but at the same time, it could be during the game. It could be during all the chaos of the game. I would love to see that if they kind of implement the story of the multiplayer. And heck, it could have just a legit story mode. Excuse me. But it's just a multiplayer game. I would love that. They kind of a Left 4 Dead sort of style game where like technically there's a story mode, but in this version it'll be a much more intense story mode where it's like you're not just going from point A to point B inside the old house. It'll actually be like a story mode, like, okay, this thing is happening, this object of power has gone crazy, or something's happened, we lost this person, within someone that's important within the company has been shifted from one plane of existence to another plane of existence, so you have to like follow the clues. There's so many possibilities with this. Like, it's simple to be like, okay, it's a 4-player multiplayer co-op game where you take out enemies, you take out the hist and stuff like that, but they could do so much with it. Like, it could really span until the game begins, or kind of go throughout the game as well. Sorry, I've been doing all these gaming videos like back to back. It's like the fourth video I've done today. So my throat is getting like a little coarse. Um, but I'm really excited for it because I'm curious about the possibilities of what they could do as far as I don't believe we'll be getting powers. I think that's specifically like a Jesse thing, like only the director is going to have abilities. So it really will be just like the gunplay, which I'm curious how that's going to play out because the weapons that the soldiers use, if you play the DLC, you know that you can actually kind of get up close to some of your fellow soldiers as well. The weapons that they use are very different than like the main weapon from the game, which is like this weird transmutable thing that can transform into like 5 or 6 now different types of weapons based on with the DLC they added a new one. So it'll be weird to see how that plays out because it seems like all the characters kind of use rifles slash machine guns, and so I was like, oh, I'm curious how that's gonna play in as far as like kind of going through the combat. What is it gonna feel like? What is it gonna look like? Having these characters with all their weird looking weapons because of course, if you played the game, you already know this, but for those of you who, for whatever reason, just randomly looking into this, all the weapons, or maybe if you forgot kind of the elements of the story, everything within the oldest house has to be old technology. So all the computers have to be much older. You can't have, newer technology. No one can have cell phones because things get a little wonky. So all the technology has to be old. Otherwise, it pretty much just won't work. So I would assume the same applies to the weapons, which aren't on the same level of technology as far as like electronic technology. It's gun-based mechanics, but there could be some elements that kind of come into play with that, especially considering some of the enemy types that kind of show up throughout the game. I would love to see if they make new enemy types as well. That'll be very interesting. So you never know what really may end up happening, but I'm excited. There's not much to talk about this because it literally was just an announcement has been made and there was like that one teaser image, but I'm very excited for it just based on how much I truly love the universe that they've made with Alan Wake, Quantum Break, and now Control. I'm excited to see what they do within the oldest house. I would love to see more of the oldest house. I mean, you see a ton of it, but it'll be great if I'm sure there's something. It's easy to be like, yeah, you saw a million things, but there's like 1,000,001 or 1,000,005. Who knows? There's so many elements that they could throw in and be like, yeah, you didn't see this part. It wasn't in the game. And then so now we might have new locations to go through, or we'll have old locations that could look different. There are things, they say the house shifts all the time. We could see elements like that was one thing that I kind of wish we saw more of in the original game. When you would get to the actual control points, I guess that was the one thing that they did use control for. The control points, when you would first get to them and Jesse slams on the ground, the rooms would actually change, like they would warp out and stuff like that, and we really only experience it from those moments and literally the beginning of the game. I thought we would experience it so much more, and that was like the one thing where I was like, I wish we got a little bit more of that, because in the beginning of the game, when you like first meet Opti and stuff, you go around, you go through that hallway, you go through that little corridor, and if you turn back around, the door is gone. Like it becomes a wall. So you have to go around. Like there's leaving an office in the middle, and it's kind of funny. The first office that's like in the middle of that segment, for anyone who doesn't remember this, it has no door. So you'll see it from one side and be like, okay, you'll see through the windows and stuff. If you go around, it's just glass. Like there's a table and it's a whole office setup, but there's no door in there. You can't go into that room in any way, shape, or form. It's just a room with glass around it because it keeps shifting. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. But we don't get to see that a lot in the actual campaign where the rooms actually shift. They say like, hey, don't leave your stuff in this refrigerator. There's notes all over the game that you can randomly find on poster boards and stuff. And they'd be like, hey, things in this refrigerator seem to disappear and shift. This office room, like maybe don't go in there because you could die, or you'll get sent off to somewhere random. So they have that like all throughout the game, like these random segments throughout the oldest house. They'll be like, this segment a little dangerous, so watch out for that. Like the place could shift and you could be who knows where. So be careful about that. So they could play around with that a lot in the multiplayer because we don't see that too much in the actual campaign where something will happen and you're just in like a mundane location and then boom, you get shifted. Like a lot of stuff you'll find on purpose. There are some segments that are definitely random. Like there's literally one part I can't remember. It's early in the game too. There's like a random room. You could literally float up, I think, and you just go somewhere else. Like if you just jump with your power, you float up and then it just takes you somewhere else. Like you just get teleported. And I was like, that's the coolest thing ever. And I think it's on like one random site. It's not even important. I think it's honestly like a random thing that you can find. I could be wrong about that, but it's like a random thing that happens. And you can just go up and you just get teleported. I think technically you go through it and you drop down from that area, but you can jump back up and you can go back through it. So little stuff like that they can mess around with where, maybe it's once again within the story, even though you're doing a specific mission, anything can happen. Like it could be very story based, more than you might expect from a co-op multiplayer game. So that's what I'm hoping for. Either way, I think I'm going to be very excited. I would love to know your thoughts if you guys have kind of thought of any theories or concepts or anything like that. Like how could this multiplayer work out? Since clearly it's within the oldest house. Based on the promo, I would say it's definitely before the actual campaign takes place, because it seemed like the people were kind of just sitting like, oh man, we just did a mission. Like they seem like they were tired, and then you could see some people in the offices, and that's not really happening during the main campaign. Everybody's like either scattered, freaking out, hiding off, or they're just like floating bodies that look really creepy. So it's probably going to take place before the main campaign, before Jesse shows up, which means we might get a bit more of the original director, which is super cool because that means more Max Payne voice. I wish I could remember the actual actor's name, unfortunately, but we'll get more of him. We might get more of Dr. Darling. That would be super cool. Like they might bring all of them back into it as well. So that'd be super cool. I would love to see that. It might actually add some more story elements going forward as well. Might give more context to some random things. We could end up at the Seaside Motel again. I would love that. I just like that place. It leads to so many interesting things. But I'm excited. I'm excited for what they're going to do with it. I'm hoping that it is more story based than co-op multiplayer based, because the possibilities basically are endless. I mean, like legit, they're almost endless. They could do pretty much anything they want. The oldest house is just this weird thing that just exists. You literally can't even see it unless the house wants you to. They could do anything with this. So I'm very excited. I'm hoping that the story is, even if it's not on the same level as, Control, which is meant to be what it is, just even if it's a small scale version of that, it's meant to be multiplayer. I get that. But they could do so much with it. There could be, like I said, random anomalies as you're doing one mission. Poof, maybe half your team gets transported. So if you're doing that, the teams get split up, and then it's two people here, two people in another section. You have to find your way back to each other. All sorts of stuff. Like obviously, if these people are going on missions, those areas are meant to be unstable. So they could do, they could play around a lot with that. So I'm just excited for the possibilities of this. I of course hope it's going to be really good. They've still, it's still in the concept phase of just, Operation Condor, codename Condor at this point. But hopefully we get some news soon. I'm very excited for this. I thought it was a great announcement. Not much to it, but obviously, with as long as I can talk about it, because of how much I love Control, there are so many possibilities. Just from what I played through the main campaign, I can think of a million things that they could do, and hopefully they do all of them, and maybe even more. I'm sure there's a million things they could do that might even tie into, the second game, or maybe even other stuff within the universe. If they do something and they start throwing even more stuff towards Alan Wake, or especially Quantum Break, because Quantum Break doesn't get as much love because of kind of the weird way that it came out and all the stuff that went around with it. I would love more stuff from Quantum Break. Maybe they could touch on that, some characters, some weird alien, not alien concepts that they kind of touched on there. I don't know. That was a confusing one. It was very interesting, but I'd like to see them kind of just take some pieces, pull them back in. I'd like to see that story continue as well. But we'd love to know your thoughts on this. Are you guys hyped? Theories? I would love to know your thoughts and theories, how it could play out. What would you like to see if they kind of went more story-based with it? How would it, kind of how would you do it? I would just love to hear your ideas for how it could work as a multiplayer co-op game, because it seems easy. Honestly, I think the action, that's the one thing that seems interesting, because the weapons are going to be so drastically different from Jesse's, the director's weapon. So that's the one part where I'm like, it's definitely gonna feel funny, because the weapons cannot even come close. They can be, machine guns and shotguns, but it'll still feel very different. It won't just be, I mean, it's a video game. You could probably still switch on the fly, but it just won't be the same kind of doing that. Plus the co-op element, I assume that they're going to be different classes as well. So there's a lot of, the classic multiplayer things where I'm like, oh, that's going to change how that plays, and, you can pick stuff. Maybe you can upgrade, maybe you can't. So lots of different elements that I'm curious about as far as like the simple core mechanics, and then the overall stuff is really where I'm most excited. But we'd love to know your thoughts on this announcement, how you guys are feeling about it. I know that can be a really iffy thing as far as like, big single player campaign and then like multiplayer weird co-op spinoff. I get that can make people weary, but I think because it's Remedy, I just always have faith. I'm like, I think they can do it. I'm not super worried. I think they're going to pull it off and it'll be just fine. But we'd love to know your thoughts, so please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.